Now Jim has made the sale, had got the customer. Now got the customer doors, open the doors. Now we're going to get John. John is going to close the sale, okay? So let's figure out what John has done all his life. John is Vice President of Sales at Kurlan Associates, who will outline the successful go-to-sales strategy. So as the company reinvents itself, John will provide an overview of how you can make your sales as you grow. John actually is local. He went to Holy Cross. So he really knows this area quite well. So John says he's actually the business strategy, he's actually the sales, business development, and business strategy. They are his passion. He has been doing that for the last 25 years. He says, if he sees a customer, he sells them something. So he tried to sell me something, and I told him, no, I have better product. Remember this up? So John will tell us how, even if you have a bad product, how you might be able to sell it. I don't know whether he'll be able to do it, or he might tell us what are the other things you can do. So he's actually, he's a full-service global sales consultant. He helps companies to develop, train, and coach sales leaders, managers, and salespeople. He has spent the majority of his sales career in the field of telecommunication technology. So, John, the floor is for you. You can tell us some tricks which we don't know.
Just to help me understand the audience, if I could get a show of hands, who in the audience would consider sales a key role in their organization, that's their key responsibility? Ooh, I see a nice show of hands there. And actually, Arm, if I can get some feedback from the audience, this would be helpful too. For the folks that raised their hands, think about some of the last, significant deals that you closed. Could you think about what were maybe one of the one or two key reasons why you think you won that business? And any volunteers from the audience? Oh, here we go. Arm. And there's one behind you too.
Okay, good. It's interesting. I think we have telecommunication companies. So we are selling broadband, and also one of the important factors for the customer was latency. And they were using Comcast, and they were getting about 40 milliseconds latency. So I looked at my thing, and we showed him the data, showing that about 3 millisecond latency because the way we have straight fiber there. Then I told the customer that, well, you can use Comcast and go and have lunch and come back, or you can use our thing and you can just see anything. He was quite impressed. So basically, I think that's a speed issue. But again, that itself was not enough. These days, people still want to save some money. So you need to be competitive price-wise. I think people are willing to wait longer, provided that it's somewhat cheaper. That's my experience.
So maybe to net that out, that was price performance of your product.
Yes, yeah. They are willing to pay for it, but not so much. Yeah, I think that's a ceiling beyond which they will not pay for it. Yeah. Yeah. Where's the question there?
Thank you. So this is pretty basic. The ultimate decision maker and leader was in the room, made the decision, and post-purchase, in Pooley's terms,
Right.
is the ongoing champion. So everyone in the organization is very excited about the post-purchase decision. And in other cases where the UDM wasn't there, no deal, because they then had to go back and sell it to the ultimate decision maker. If that makes any sense.
Oh,
So if the
absolutely
buyer
it does.
if the buyer
Right.
isn't in the room, chances are you're not going to make the sale. That's
You had the person that writes the check
correct.
in the audience, yep. And the reason I'm asking that is the whole theme of my presentation, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons people buy, but one thing I want to impress upon everybody in this audience is that you can really be the difference in that purchasing decision. And that's one reason I've entitled this presentation, You Are the Value. And I'm John Petrella, and I'm with, as Arm mentioned, a global consulting firm based in Westboro, Mass., Kurlan Associates. And I am excited to be here, appreciate the opportunity. So we'll get going. Just some questions I want to start with. Really, who and what do you want to be in the sales environment? Do you want to be memorable? The saying I've had over the years is and I'm really focusing here on this, really that first encounter that you'll have with a client, whether it's over the phone or preferably face-to-face. You want to be memorable because I've had a saying that if you're not, then that when you go to re-engage, they're in a 3-year meeting, basically, which means every time you try to call or connect, we'll tell him or her I'm in a meeting because you didn't add value, you weren't memorable. So that's the goal. Do you want to be a trusted advisor? Do you want to be a long-term partner? And finally, do you want to leave the competition in the dust? And obviously the answer is yes to all these 3. Now, this is something I've been teaching all the years as a sales leader. When I was especially at Sprint, I managed sales teams for close to 10 years. When I would teach someone coming up in the ranks, and I really, truly believe that first engagement is really the key to the sales process, where you're either going to be that memorable person and move the process forward, actually or find out that they're not qualified and not someone you want to do business with, or one of those key accounts that Jim mentioned, or it's, you're going to be able to move that process forward because you find all the information you need. And I use this visual here, the spotlight's on the customer, and I put the phrase up here, interrogation room. I mean, picture those old police shows, where they have the suspect in the smoke-filled room and they're asking the questions. If you notice, the man's in the shadows, that's you. Because the spotlight really, it's not about you in that first meeting at all. And I know everyone's excited about their technology and their new whiz-bang product, but it's really about the customer and their needs. And I'll give you a real-life example from my time as a leader at Sprint. And I'll change the names to protect the innocent. I had a sales rep, and we'll call him Ted. And Ted was enamored with our Sprint pitch book that spoke to the financial solvency of the company and the capabilities of the company and the power of our network. And literally within 5 seconds after a handshake, that pitch book was coming out, and he was starting to talk about his company and Sprint. And I said, Ted, I leave that in the office or leave it in the car. I don't ever want to see that out there again because it's about the customer. So I'm meeting Ted for a sales call, and it's at a bank, South Shore on the Cape, a regional bank. And I've caught in traffic. I'm going to be 5 minutes late. So I call Ted, and I said, Ted, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. Wait for me in the lobby, please. Guess what? Mr. Headstrong Ted goes ahead without me, and I'm signing in at the customer desk, and it was one of those conference rooms where it was the kind of the glass room, and 5 minutes, and I could already see Ted had the pitch book out. And I'm like, oh, the fire alarm's going off in my head. So I walk in the room, and guess what? This is, once again, I want to stress this point. After 5 minutes, their eyeballs were rolling in the back of their head. I mean, they were ready to fall asleep already, disinterested. That 3-year meeting was coming real quick. So what I did, and this is a tactic, by the way, that you can use, is you can stop the action and re-engage. And I just basically put my arm around Ted, and I said, there was 2 women from the bank in the meeting. I said, I know Ted's really excited about our company and its capabilities, but this isn't really what it's about. It's about who you are and why we're called into this meeting today and your issues and concerns. And you could just see them go, oh, thank God. They talked to us for an hour and a half after that, gave us all the information that we needed to, craft the right solution and, close that sale. So I know it's overly dramatic, but once again, you're really excited about all the hard work and sweat and blood that you put into your product. Right away, it's not about that. It's about them and their needs. And I know Jim pointed that out in his presentation as well. This is an old saying, and this dovetails really well. How can you be interesting? How do you become interesting? Jim's shaking his head. He's saying, he knows this one. You become interested. And so how do you do that? You got to be curious. You got to ask why. You got to ask a lot of pointed questions. Keep probing. Ask why did you answer it that way? Keep digging. And Jim mentioned you have to add some insights and ideas based on your research of the company. How else can you add value? Things that they haven't thought about before. And be willing to challenge them. Because that's how you become memorable and how you stand out versus your competition. Boy, if the person on the other side of the table says, boy, I haven't thought of that, you're on your way. You are on your way. So really the objectives of this conversation, once again, that first meeting where the spotlight's on the customer, you really want to uncover the business issues related to their product or not related to their product, because they're all interrelated. It's about their business. What issues are going on in the business, especially the ones that, based on your research, that your product can help solve. Now, here's another key that I think we haven't addressed yet. You really want to uncover the emotional issues that are tied to this, because most people, depending on their role, who they are in the company, what their function is, there's some sort of emotional tie to this business pain. And you really have to ask questions to probe to it. And in every case, it's something different. Once you have that, you really have to probe even more and find out what are the consequences if the business and emotional issues are not addressed. Because people, at the end of the day, they buy and act based on emotion. And I'll give you a real recent example. This is a prospect, and I'm not going to give too much detail. But in the discussion on their sales team, they talked about this one rep closed, they brought 21 proposals in since the beginning of 2015. You think that's wonderful, right? Guess how many this person has closed? One. Well, close. We have one. So not a good batting average. Not a good batting average at all. And in probing a little bit more with this individual, I said, well, I'm just curious, what are those deals worth, those 20 that you lost? And he's grabbing his head. He goes, John, you don't want to know. I mean, you could tell there's pain there. I suppose, yeah, I do want to know. $700,000 to the company. And if you just think of a normal average close ratio of 30%, there's $250,000 that this company's left on the table. So, you parlay that into it can justify an investment in sales training and improved sales efforts very easily. The other piece of this is I found out, once again, probing more, he's a minority partner in this business, and over the next 18 months, the plan is for him to be a majority partner. So guess what? He doesn't want to inherit a sales team that is, the curve's going down. He wants to improve sales. So, because his family and his future depends on it. Here's another one. Once again, talking about that first engagement, I like to call this staying in the moment or read and react. And behind me I have, Teddy Bruschi. He's in the athletic position, right? He's in the athletic position. He's like focused straight ahead. And guess what he's focused on? He's focused on what's going on with the offense, what play they're running. Does he have to drop back in coverage? Is it a run play? But he, two things. He understands his defense and what his setup is, but based on his film study and his research, he knows, based on the formation, what the offense is running, and he's totally focused and engaged and in the moment. So when the ball's hiked, he's reacting appropriately. So the key here is, and we call this control of emotions at Kurlan. You really have to stay in the moment, not have whatever the customer's saying to you throw you off. You have to listen, because if you're thinking ahead, and I know this, I'm guilty of this sometimes. I'm like, oh, I know the answer to this. I know what the end game's gonna be, and I'm already thinking 3 steps ahead. If you're doing that, you're not listening to the customer, and you may miss a key nugget that's gonna help you move that situation forward. So once again, stay in the moment. So that enables you, based on your research, understanding the customer, to be able to read and react appropriately and move that discussion along. So guess what happens if you're really focused on the customer and you're being interesting because you're interested, you're asking great questions, and you're adding value, and you're adding insights and ideas that they hadn't thought of before? You know, guess what? A relationship develops, you know, based on mutual trust and respect. And Jim alluded to this. I firmly believe in this. Relationship selling is not dead. Absolutely not. We'll talk about this in a little bit. It just, because of all the internet and social media and everything else and all the research done up front, it just tends to happen a little bit later in the process. But one thing I'll contend is while we're asking our questions and doing our thing, guess what? On the other side of the table, they're checking us out. And once again, they're seeing if we really add value. Because if you don't, then they're going to move on to the next person. So in my mind, who do people want to buy from? And there's a couple of key things in my mind, which are people that understand them. You know, people that you have to have the solution to the problem that they have, or problems that they have, and be able to convince them that you can deliver on those. You know, that's where those reference accounts would come in. And then I think this is key. This is about the relationship part, and I've used this as a closing line over the years. Do you want to work with that team, or do you want to work with us and my team? You know, who can you work and collaborate with long term? Because I've said this in a sales situation or just in discussions, a business relationship is a lot like a marriage. If you think about some of your key vendor partnerships or, you know, key relationships in business, there's a lot of communication that goes on. I mean, a lot of phone calls, a lot of nights, weekends, you know, especially depending on the size and scope of the project. You gotta have to like this, you know, the person and like that team. And, you know, I think it ties into that, you know, experience after the sale. You have to convince them up front that that experience after the sale is going to be positive, and you're going to be someone they want to work with. Once again, otherwise you'll be in that 3-year meeting. You'll never get to re-engage. So just to summarize, if you place the spotlight on the customer, you ask a lot of key questions, differentiate yourself, you uncover those business and emotional problems and consequences, and you stay in the moment, then you will become the value. And there's my information. I'm not a fancy text-to-pooly or anything. It's just, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I guess Petrella at KurlanAssociates.com, my cell phone 508-579-6833. So thank you. Are there any questions?
Hi, thanks, John. My question is, would you look to hire a different type of salesperson for the early sales versus later on? So is there a different set of traits that you'd look for to hire somebody as a startup versus a more mature company?
That's a great question. What's coming to mind is, I think it dovetails with what Jim talked about with those key customers, you know, before you've, you know, really burned it in. I would think that, you know, in a startup scenario that the leader or the CEO or chairman would be, you know, also have that role as sales leader. And then once you have that burned in and have some reference accounts and it's something that can be repeatable, you know, documented, then you could bring in another, you know, type of, you know, say hunter salesperson to do the follow-up work. But I mean, my guess would be in the beginning that, you know, you would have to have that business leader, you know, or really the CEO be that key salesperson to get it off the ground, if that answers your question.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
How do you deal with a situation where you're asking questions, you want to find out more, and they don't want to tell you?
Um, it's funny because I think, Jim kind of mentioned it with the Challenger sale. You have to kind of push back. And you might say, these questions are going to help me, with the design the proper solution to your problems. Can you explain to me why you're not answering these questions? I mean, it may take those people aback, but in your mind, or it could be that they're not the right person to be talking to. And there could be some other political reason why they're not divulging the information to you. So once again, it's just keep probing until you get to the root of why they aren't answering the questions. Because if they're not the right person, then you need to find the right person that can help you. Was that helpful? Yeah, good, great.
Yeah, I had a question about the context of the client and the decision maker. You talked a lot about finding out about that person, and Jim also talked a lot about finding out about that person. And
Right.
how do you make a judgment about who does more of that work, the marketing group, which is a process, or the salesperson? I imagine it's a battle all the time, and every company's probably different.
Boy, it's funny. I mean, it depends on who you talk to. I mean, I think the blur between sales and marketing, it just keeps getting, fuzzier and fuzzier compared to when I started, 25 plus years ago. I mean, there was a clear delineation. I think one area that I know sales can help marketing is really giving that street level feedback back to marketing, where they, once again, to help with that persona and what the real issues and challenges are. Because sometimes what happens with marketing is they get a little bit removed from the client themselves and don't have that true, in the field, here's what my pain is, here's what my issues are. It's a great question, but I would say that, the marketing piece, the marketing would be the main group to kind of put that persona together. But then I would say that based on the sales team's feedback to marketing, it would have to be altered or tweaked or adjusted if that helps. Yeah. So it's a team effort. It's a joint effort. Yes.
You see, with the startup, they have new products or service which is very efficient. So
Right.
they go to a company in India, and the company is using some other established company product, say IBM. Say it's worth, so they say, I have a solution for you which is 30 to 50% inexpensive, does much better. But the customer doesn't want to buy from you because you are too small. That you frequently come across situations in India. So how do you overcome such objections in a situation where the customer is very hesitant? They always say that, well, I don't lose my job by buying from IBM. So that kind of situation, how do you kind of, it's a real situation a lot of companies, startup companies face.
Well, and I think it's even the large companies. When I was with Sprint, they would be with, one of our main competitors, AT&T, for example, have all the business. The way I would approach it, customers like beta or alpha, maybe you try to make them like a test client. And, it might be, once again, if it's one of those key target accounts that you really want to have, that might be worth your time to say, hey, you can help in product development, and, there's something in it for them. Because if they end up gaining the efficiencies that you talk about, then it's a win-win for everybody. The other piece of it is maybe they don't want to give you their whole enterprise, but maybe you could take a branch or one location. And to use a war analogy, I've called this the beachhead theory. When they were storming the Pacific in World War II, to take the island, you got to take the beach first. So, start small, and then you get that, post-sale satisfaction that Jim talked about. You understand all the systems are set up, how you can work together, and then you grow it from there. That's what I found to be work in the past for me.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
All right.